Welcome everyone to today's webinar, Beyond a Thank You, How Recognition Drives Volunteer Retention. I'm Claudia, Marketing Manager at Rosterfy in the UK. And on the call today we have Sam Bennett, Rosterfy Sales Lead, who has been hosting this series of volunteer management webinars over the past few months. And we are very excited to be joined today by our special guest, Angelie Tilly, Volunteer Manager at the Literacy Pirates. Sam and Angelie will be discussing how the Literacy Pirates have created a meaningful volunteer experience and the importance of rewarding and recognising the contributions of your volunteers. This webinar will be about 20 minutes long with time for questions at the end. So you'll see a chat box and a question box in the top right-hand corner of your screen. So any comments or questions along the way, please put them through there. And as always, the webinar will be recorded. The video will be shared with you via email and also will be later available on our website for you to rewatch or share with anyone who couldn't make the webinar today. So thank you again for joining us this morning. I will pass it over to Sam to get started with the presentation.
Thanks very much, Claudia, and welcome everyone. If this is the first time that you've come to a Rosterfy webinar, welcome. My name's Sam Bennett. We do tend to keep these sessions quite short and snappy, so it's around 20 minutes worth of content. I'm really excited to have Angelie with us today. So this is part of a wider series. I will recap at the end, but we have run 5 or 6 maybe different episodes within this series, and this is something that will continue through into 2025 as well. So that series will be made available on demand, so not only will you be able to recap today's episode, but also see some of the other customer stories and topics that have been discussed earlier on in this series too. I'm really excited to have Angelie with us today. So Literacy Pirates are a very special charity in North London who actually support children all over the UK now with helping with their reading and writing skills. I've been lucky enough to go along to one of the seminars, and from the first time I met Angelie, I was really impressed with the way that they were managing their volunteer program. Certainly a lot of focus is applied at Literacy Pirates on what makes a good volunteer experience. There are a number of different training and screening steps that have to be done for volunteers to support young people within their charity, but they've done a really good job of tracking how many people are engaged throughout that process and how do they make that streamlined experience as good as it can be, which leads on to the retention point. So Angelie's got some great ideas, and I'm really excited to have her today to talk through some of those. For those that have been before, I do apologise. We are just going to do our usual Rosterfy intro. So just to introduce Rosterfy to those that don't know us. We've been in the market around about 10 years. I've worked at the company right now for around about 2.5 of those years. We're very proud this year to have surpassed 100 million volunteering hours through the Rosterfy platform. That is obviously something that has been enabled via the great programs that are using our platform. So the likes of Literacy Pirates have certainly contributed to that. We have operated with volunteer programs now in 35 different countries and around about 15 different languages as well. So it's been a real journey and a real wide mix of programs that we've supported. And on the next slide, there's actually just a pocket, kind of a spread of different programs across city governments, some of the biggest events around the world in sporting and arts, also national governing bodies, and then charities of all sizes and shapes as well. So there's not a lot that we haven't seen when it comes to volunteering, and yeah, the platform is very configurable and scalable, and we've seen a real wide mix of great work being done by the volunteer community, and know what good looks like when it comes to a good volunteer program. So this slide here talks a little bit about the end-to-end journey of a volunteer and the way that we see it. And this really we've tried to build this webinar theme around this funnel. So really starting from the top of how do you create awareness for your volunteer program and the different roles and initiatives that you have available. Quite often with volunteers, they will want to volunteer with a charity because they feel connected to your cause and want to find ways to help. And one of the biggest things that you can do is show them how they can help, because quite often people feel a bit powerless to understand what they can actually do that would actually be valuable to the charity. So in that awareness stage, it's about how do we drive up engagement? How do we target messaging to different demographics? How do we show them what they can do that would really support their communities, and also what they would get out of the program as well? That then feeds through to how do we recruit people better, so get them through the various background checks, screening checks, references, training, and so on. And that's something that Rosterfy platform can help with in terms of getting people through that journey as quick and easily as possible. And then it's about scheduling them into shifts or tracking the impact and the work that they're doing on an ad hoc basis, and having the insights and the reporting out of the back of it as well, so that we can use that data to retain and reward volunteers better, and essentially, yeah, improve our program and make it more inclusive to all kinds of different demographics. That is what Angelie and the Literacy Pirates do particularly well. So I'm going to, oh no, I've got one more slide. I was going to hand over to Angelie in just a second, but I guess for the theme of today, so looking back at that funnel, we're really focusing on the retain and reward section of this funnel as we work through the process. So this is all about, once a volunteer has come to help with your charity, how do we keep them engaged? So what we see, certainly in some of our customers, is you've got to find a way of recognizing the overall impact of your supporters, feeding back the difference that their volunteering is making to that organization with your messaging. So not just kind of saying, oh, thanks so much for doing 5 hours in a retail store or giving us 2 sessions of your time this year. What difference has that made to you, and how can we surface up some of that information back to the volunteers? If you are capturing at the beginning, when people are signing up, their interest in volunteering and the reasons for them getting involved, we can of course use some of that information as well to surface back messaging and find ways to reward them in the areas that they're interested in. So for example, I don't want to steal Angelie's thunder, but a lot of the work that they do is with university students. So it's thinking about university students want to develop their skill set, develop their CV. So it's helping to support them with, how do we help them to enable some of those social skills, and how do we help them surface that up on their job applications and future applications for work as well. So over to you, Angelie. Just, yeah, tell us a little bit about Literacy Pirates and your journey in the last few years, and some of the work that you've been doing.
Yes, thank you. So the Literacy Parrots is an after-school program for children aged 9 to 12, and we work with schools in London, and also so the children come to our parrot ship, which is located in East London, which is our centre, and they will also join us online. I will be popping a lot of parrot theme words, you'll see, because that's how we work here. But the young people we work with are called young parrots. The volunteers are called crewmates. So if you hear me use those words, that's what it means. But the young parrots come to us in our parrot ship, so in person or on the virtual parrot ship, and they are supported throughout the whole year, so 1 year for the in-person program and 1 term for the virtual program. And they will be working with volunteers, crewmates, with reading and writing. So during the program, the children will work on stories and poems that they write that are about themselves most of the time. And then once they have worked on those stories and created all those amazing stories and poems with the support of the crewmates, it's published into a book. So every children who is part of our program ends the program as a published author, with their own books that they can add on their bookshelf at home. And whether they are in person or virtual, every young parrot ends with a book, which is very meaningful because it has a very big impact. It's a tangent result, and it's a real boost of confidence for the young parrots. All their work is published, as I said, and all of this is possible because of the volunteers who work with the young parrot. So volunteer will sign up with us, and they will start their journey on the crew log, which is how we call the Rosterfy portal for our volunteers. And they will complete trainings, criminal background checks, welcome meeting, so a meeting with a member of the volunteer team. So they have a few things to do to complete what we call the pipeline before they are able to come into session. And when they are coming to session, we ask them to commit to attending 12 sessions across a year. We always say we recommend about 1 session a month. We've calculated that is what is the most useful for us in terms of time we spend training volunteers and money we invest in them and how long they should stay. And we have good retention ratio. So we do have good numbers of volunteers who do complete the 12 sessions, and we have loads that stay beyond those 12 sessions as well. So that is also something that works pretty well. We can probably go to the next slide.
Yeah, excellent. So go on, Angelie. I know you've got a few different ways that you retain and reward volunteers, particularly, and one of the most kind of visual ones is the badges. And I know you mentioned a different scheme that you're using to me last week that I'd not even heard of. So yeah, do you want to talk a little bit about some of the ways that you do congratulate and reward those volunteers?
Yes, absolutely. So as I mentioned, we ask our volunteers to commit to attending 12 sessions, but we do mark milestones. So once they come to their first session, they get a badge that says you're now a crewmate. So crewmates, as I said, is how we call our volunteers. When they come in person, we give them a physical badge, but all our volunteers in person, virtual, will get a digital badge, let's call it, on the crew log. So every time they log in, they will see exactly where they are in their journey in terms of how many sessions they've completed. Then they get another badge at 6th session, which is halfway through their minimum commitment. They become a Sea Dog as the milestone. And then when they've done their 12 sessions, they are a Buccaneer. They also get a badge. And that's the minimum commitment, as we say. So we always celebrate those milestones. At the end of every session, a member of the volunteer team come to meet the volunteers before they leave to do what we call a volunteer debrief. So making sure we have time to talk to the volunteers, check if they're okay, if everything was okay, they can give us feedback on how they work with the young parrots, and then we are going to celebrate their achievements by giving them the badges. We give 1, 6, and 12, and then every 10s, so 20, 30, 40, 50, etc., etc. We had to stop at 100 because it's like some volunteers get loads of badges, which is brilliant. But at 100 session, you get a certificate signed by the captain, which is the CEO of Literacy Parrots. But it's a real shout out for our volunteers to say, like, we're really grateful for all the works you're doing with us, and all the time you're spending supporting the young parrots. So we do have volunteers, as I said, who have collected quite a lot. And I always thought, when I joined, I thought, oh, badges are a bit like, it's a little bit of metal. Like, no, actually, volunteers really appreciate that. Some will wear them when they come for the next session, which I think is really cute. Some will put them on their lanyard at work as well. So I think it's a little something that really means a lot to the volunteers. And we decided to also put at 6, because it's a signal that you're halfway through. So that also is a reminder that there is a minimum commitment, because 6 sessions could have been achieved within 6 months, and by then you may have forgotten that 6 months ago I told you that the minimum commitment was 12. So yeah, it's just also a good reminder of that. We also offer other things outside of badges to thanks our volunteers, to reward them, let's say. We provide references to volunteers who have attended at least 6 sessions. So if they've done 6 to 11 sessions, we'll do what we call a simple reference, where we confirm hours they've done with us, and that they are volunteer with us. And if they've done 12 sessions or more, we do a full character reference. And that is very useful for volunteers who are looking for jobs, especially if they're looking for employment within the education sector or working with young people. And it's also very attractive to student volunteers who at that point in their life don't necessarily have a lot of career experience, professional experience that could provide them with references. So this is something we do a lot. And then we have what Sam mentioned, another rewarding program, which is called Tempo Time Credits. And this is something that it's a company who offer time credits. So how it works is that we as an organization buy time credits, and we can give them out to volunteers, and 1 credit equal a value of something that is worth 1 hour. So we can give, for example, 1 credit to a volunteer who attended a session, and in exchange they can use that credit to book a yoga class or go to the swimming pool. If they have 3 or 4 credits, they might be able to book a theatre ticket, or a cruise on the Thames, or whatever it is they want to do. The Tempo Time credits are fairly cheap. It's about 10p a credit, and it's something that we use to reward our volunteers as well. So what we say is, as soon as you've hit 6 sessions, so there's an incentive to stay for at least 6 sessions. As soon as you've hit 6 sessions, we will send you 1 Tempo Time credit a month you're volunteering with us, and then they can collect them and get a few, 3, 4, 5, and then exchange it for something for an experience. So it's not money reward. They can't exchange it for an object or like a discount in a shop or something like that. They can exchange it for something that has a time value, like, as I said, a yoga class or an entry to the zoo. There's so much reward, and its rewards are available all across the UK, not just in London, which means that we can also reward our virtual volunteers, and that was very important to us because we do have volunteers all across the UK, and it's just so easy sometimes to forget that they also need to feel like they are recognized and their work is valued by us. We also provide volunteer socials, the good old volunteer social once a quarter. That also kind of works. But yes, that's the most we do in terms of volunteer recognition.
Amazing. Thanks so much, Angelie. Well, just quickly on those, since introducing that, have you seen a difference in people staying after the 6 sessions, for example?
I haven't necessarily had a look at this, but I think we
Too early.
do see that volunteers have appreciated the rewards, and we have seen we can see when volunteers use then tempo time credits, and that has gone up as well. So that's also a really good sign.
Yeah, definitely. And you've done a really good job. I know that we're coming on to the next slide here, but you've done a really good job of forming partnerships with the universities, haven't you? Which is the big source
Mm-hmm.
of where your volunteers come from. And I'm assuming that those university students will feed back to the university about how their experience has been and would they recommend it for other students and those sorts of things. So I guess they're quite important, aren't they, when you're talking about the references and what they're getting out of it? It's important that they're leaving feeling quite positive about it to continue that partnership.
Absolutely, and a lot of the students we work with have to complete work placement. There's a university, I think I can't remember if it's Glasgow or Westminster. There's a new university we work with who now have work placement that are mandatory for their students, and volunteering counts towards work placement. So we provide this volunteering opportunity for them, but we also fill in their paperwork that are needed when you are a student and you do work placement. And that is very valuable for the students, but also for the university who are then able to offer more experience, more extracurricular activities for their students, for sure.
Definitely. Very good. Love that. Thank you very much. And you just on some of the statistics, as I said, even before you were using Rosterfy, you were doing an amazing job of tracking. You were using Salesforce and a mix of spreadsheets, I think, at the time, to track those different data points as people work their way through the journey. So do you want to just talk through, I know that you continually look for ways to improve this and try and find ways to make it that bit quicker and that bit better. So do you want to just talk through what the last year or so has looked like?
Yes, so we have, as you said, worked a lot with universities, which meant that we've been able to recruit a bit more volunteer students. And I think they are about 50% of our active volunteers now. They are coming from universities and student volunteers, which has been very helpful to us because we run a program that runs alongside school years, which means that it also works well for students who are at universities because that's also when they are available. Usually those students are not too keen on volunteering during the summer. They might be doing a lot of other things. So the fact that our program started September and run until like beginning of July means that it's a good time frame for students. So working with universities, increasing the number of partnerships we have with university has helped a lot. We also have increased the number of social media campaign we're doing and a lot of advertising, and that has also helped with increasing the number of volunteers we've got. But one of the most important factor that has made our volunteer recruitment a little bit more successful is the lag time, so what we call the time between volunteers sign up with us and is able to come to their first session. So the time it takes them to complete their training and complete their criminal background checks and any other things they need to do before they can get to meet one of the young people we work with. They used to be on average, they used to take about 140 days to complete the whole pipeline, which is quite long. And now they take on average 50 to 60 days, which is a huge drop. Way quicker, and that means that our volunteers spend less time in the pipeline. They're less likely to kind of like forget that they've signed up to this thing or lose motivation, and that has been a big change for us, a big factor in how our recruitment's gone a lot better. We also monitor a lot the ratio of volunteers to young people we work with in session. For the in-person set of program, we want to have one volunteer per young person, and for the virtual one, we want one volunteer for 2 young people. And we've also seen an improvement on the ratio of volunteers to young people, because we've been able to recruit more people, because we've been able to get them in quicker. It means we get more in session, and that is what makes the big difference, is when they are in session. It's not just them completing the training and doing the DBS background because we asked them to, it's them being in session and working with the young people. Yeah.
Yeah, that makes sense. And just talk us through, so that just intrigued, you run to the school year, right? So your programs start around about September. So what does a year look like for you? Do you kind of go through an exercise around about now of, who wants to come back next year, and understand how many of them are staying with you, and then calculate the numbers you're going to need for September? How does that look?
The need of volunteers is based on the number of young people we are going to be working with. So we use that as a base. We say, okay, so if we're working with X amount of young people, we are going to need X amount of volunteers. We also know that student volunteers, because of why they get involved with us, they usually will stay for about a year, and they might not stay beyond that point, which is something we know about, but it's working still, because they will stay for a year, which is our minimum commitment. But we also know that it means that the next September and October, there's going to be a new input of new volunteer students who will come and join us at that point. So it means that for us, I would say now is a bit early to start thinking about volunteer recruitment for students, but around February, we start getting in touch again with universities, getting them involved again, and starting to look towards the next recruitment of student volunteers. But we do recruit volunteers all year round, because we don't just work with student volunteers, we work also with individuals and corporate partners, and those people will sign up all year round. So we have an outreach recruitment process all year round, but with specific time during the year where we're going to focus a bit more with students, for example, or we're going to focus a bit more on people who are retired, or so depending who we're targeting at that point, we might direct our attention to that specific target audience.
Yeah, very good. And the corporates and the retired volunteers, do they do different roles, or is it all just coming into the same program, same onboarding process?
We have only one role, which is
Yeah.
our volunteer crewmate role. So everyone does the same thing. The only difference is whether you're going to volunteer online or in person, because if you volunteer online, we need to train you on how to use the software we are using online, but that's the only difference. Everything else is just the same.
Yeah. And just quick last question on it, the
Mhm.
different demographics that you work with, because obviously you mentioned the students, they like the references, they like the reward of kind of building out their CV. That's going to look very different, I'm assuming, for someone who's retired. Do you do any work around understanding those motivations at all, and what does that look like generally?
Yeah, absolutely. So for other volunteers that are not students, we find that references actually is attractive to loads of different population, loads of different ages. We get requests from a lot of people, especially people who are currently looking for work or looking to change work. For people who are retired, they usually care a lot about the local community. They also care a lot about the mission and the impact. So that's how we talk to them. We share, not that we don't share the impact and how their works benefit the volunteers, the young people, to all the volunteers, but this is what will attract the people who are retired a little bit more. There's also a flexibility on when and how often you can sign up, which can be really easy to fit in your calendar, even if you're retired. I know so many retired people who have very busy agendas, so that's also something that works pretty well.
Yeah, excellent. That's really good. And I love the fact you've really focused on your experience. You really understand the motivations. You created that great kind of streamlined onboarding process where you're getting people through quicker. And it's made a big difference as well in your ability to take on more signups. Looking at that stat there, you've gone from 70 a month signups to over 150. So more than doubled the amount of applications you're getting through, which is amazing. So amazing work. We have got about 6 minutes left of the session, so I'm just going to pause and see if there are any questions that have come through. Whilst that happens, there is also a blog that Claudia and the team and our marketing team have put together around this topic. On the Rosterfy website, there is also a case study as well for the literacy pirates, so feel free to go and have a look at that and some of the stats and some of the work that Angelie has done. Have there been any questions come through, Claudia?
We have got a few questions. The first one is just a few people wondering what the name of that company was that you use with the time credits, and I believe, was it Tempo time credits?
Exactly,
name?
Tempo time credits. Yeah.
Great. Maybe we'll pop a link in the chat so people can find that. Another question we've had come through is any advice for engaging and managing volunteers with a small team and I guess limited resources?
Yeah, engagement can take a lot of time. I'm thinking specifically of Tempo time credit because of the way we've decided to use it. It means that every month we have to track our data and send the credits to the volunteers, and that can be time consuming. I think Rosterfy works very well with automation, and that's something that has helped us a lot. So for example, all the digital badges that we give our volunteers, we have an automation design that knows that when a volunteer has done their first session, they will get the digital badge. When they have their sixth session, they will get the digital badge. So I think having this kind of automation works really well. And we also, I was mentioning that for Tempo, but we also have made it a bit easier for us to say, we're not going to reward you the Tempo time credit, for example, at each single session, but every month you volunteer with us, which means that instead of doing it every time someone volunteers and we have to check it every week or every day, we only do that check once a month. And that means that it's a job that is done at some point and then we don't have to think about it for another few weeks. So this is how we've managed that. We also, when we think about rewards, we really have like what works for us as well as the volunteer. So we have loads of templates for our reference requests, for example. There's always someone who's going to reach out and they have, like the company who's requesting the reference have their own form, but we provide template reference as well, which means that we only pop names and the details about the volunteer. We don't have to write the whole thing. So having those in place that we can quickly reference when we need to send a reference works really well for us as well.
Great, thank you. And one other question is, do you provide any opportunities for volunteers to connect with each other, I guess, outside of the sessions?
So outside of session, we have a volunteer social, as I mentioned earlier, but will be in person. Virtually, we don't currently have a lot of opportunity for volunteers to connect, but this is our focus for this coming year, 2025. And we really want to work on making a virtual social space for volunteers to connect. So we're thinking about being a literacy charity. We're thinking about organizing a book club, for example, maybe using like some sort of forums maybe that volunteers could go to and talk to each other without creating too much work for us. We're just still in the beginning stage of thinking about that. But there's definitely a need for us. That's something we are going to work on actively from January, about how can we create a community of virtual volunteers and make them feel like they can talk to each other, and not just, especially online, because online they will be volunteering in breakout rooms with the young parents and they don't have a lot of opportunity to talk to each other, which I will have more in person. So that is a big focus that we're going to have for 2025.
Great, that's very exciting. I love the idea of a book club. That's really nice. Okay, that's probably all the time we have for questions. But yeah, as Sam said, there's a link here with the QR code to scan to have a look at the Literacy Pirates case study if you're interested to find out a little bit more. But just want to say a big thank you to Angelie for joining us for today's webinar, and thank you to Sam for hosting, and for everyone on the call today making the time to join us. So if there's any other questions, please feel free to reach out to the team.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Angelie, and thanks everyone for joining. We'll see you in 2025.